Hello, and welcome back to another episode of International Immersion, a podcast that seeks to capture the combined experiences of people, culture, places, traveling, current events, living abroad, and everything that can come along with them. For today's episode, we have a very unique thing we have for you in that we are going to be interviewing a multicultural couple that I've come to know recently, and they have some very interesting thoughts and insights about relationships and the dynamics and aspects that make relationships successful, and along with many other things. So, guys, it's really nice to have you on here today. I hope you guys have been well and weathering the Corona storm, as we're calling it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're doing it quite well so far. Up here at North. Yeah.
That's great. So, Oljas, it's great to talk to you, and Tu, great to talk to you. So if you guys want, maybe you can give us a little introduction or a little background about yourselves.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Tu, and I'm from Vietnam. I was born and I grew up in Vietnam originally. And I moved to the States when I was 18 years old to do my bachelor's degree. And then after that, I spent a year in between, and then followed by 5 years of my PhD in the US as well. And so I spent in total about 9 years living in the United States.
Oh, wow. Quite a journey there.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you?
Yeah, my name is Oljas Yestikov. I'm born and raised in Kazakhstan. And I moved to States first time when I was 19 to Colorado. And second time when I was 24 to Ohio. That's where I met Tu. And before that, I lived 1 year in London, UK. And right now we live in Canada. So, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty neat. You guys are from two countries, very far apart, but yet you guys meet in the US, and now you guys are living in Canada. So talk about hopping around the globe.
Yeah. For sure. We counted how many cities we moved around, and each of us moved 12 times in a lifetime and 12 different cities around the world.
Wow, that's not many people can boast that about moving around.
For sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. So that leads into our discussion tonight, talking about your relationship and a lot of the aspects that kind of define it. So you kind of answered the first question, but first and foremost, is how did you both meet?
So we met in the University of Akron, Ohio, where we both were doing our master's degree. So I was doing master's in accounting, and Tu was doing master's in economics, and we just met through the friends, through graduate students. And we were hanging out with a lot of other international students, and that's how we met.
I see. Okay.
Masters together. Yeah.
That's cool. So did your relationship develop, rather quickly, or was it more over time?
You want to go ahead? Yeah, it's over time. Yeah. So when we just met, it developed over time because we also moved around a lot. So when we met first time, we were in Ohio, and then we started dating. At the same time, we had to do distance for a very long time, for almost 5 years. So Tu moved to Oregon, and I wasn't able to stay in the United States after I graduated. I was on a Fulbright scholarship from United States Department. United States Department of State, and I wasn't able to stay in US, so I had to go back to Kazakhstan, and I have to move to Canada. So I think it develops through the time and going through all those hurdles and barriers of dating on a distance and living in two different countries for a very, very long time.
And that must have been difficult because I've done long distance before too, and it's tough. But for that long, that's talk about challenging. But it's great to see that you both were able to, it didn't dissuade you or cause something to kind of break you guys apart.
It was challenging and it was hard in times, but we worked together through it, and each of us tried to make it work, and we both like to travel a lot, so that gave us also opportunity to come visit each other and travel together, and at least once a month or once in 2 or 3 months we would come and visit each other wherever we live.
That's great. And, I think it comes down to, if you both want to make it work and are willing to put the time and effort into it, anything is possible. I find that's probably the most common or more important thing that for relationships is, as long as both parties want it to work, they'll find a way to make it work.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, agree on that. Yeah.
And that kind of leads into another interesting question is, because you guys are from two different countries, different backgrounds, different languages and everything. So how did your backgrounds influence like your relationship from like when you first met as to your getting to know each other, developing the relationship? And I'm sure it also manifests in habits, behavior, all these things. Having dated internationally myself, I definitely have experienced this.
I think that our different backgrounds actually made us to be in the first place, made us to be interested in each other, right? When the two moved from New York City to Akron, Ohio, and then moved from London to Akron, Ohio. Akron, I wouldn't say it's a big city, right? But we both moved from huge cities. And I found that quite interesting in her that she's from Vietnam. She lived in Buffalo, New York City. She did a degree and she traveled around the world, and she has so much to share the experience. And I didn't know much of Vietnamese culture and Vietnamese food, and I wasn't, I guess, exposed to it and in my country. So it was really interesting to find out more about her. That's what was the main thing when I met her. It was like, well, I would like to find out more about you, about the food, culture. And what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was definitely interesting because so Ojas is from Kazakhstan, which I had never met anybody from that country before. There are not a lot of, I guess, Kazakh people in the US or in Vietnam or anywhere I'd lived before that.
So there were actually quite a few in China that I met.
In China, yeah.
So you've met some. Most people I've talked to have never met a Kazakh person. So so I was intrigued. I was like, well, okay, tell me more about your country because I know nothing about it, right? And so I think that one thing led to another, and we found out that even though like our countries were far away from each other, there were actually a lot of commonalities.
Oh yes.
We could share. So that was very interesting to find out and work through all these like cultural stories and differences as well as similarities.
Yes, yeah.
No, I think you bring up a really good point is that I think the mutual curiosity and interest is a very important factor. And, unlike you're dating someone from your own country, I mean, that can be present too, but dating someone from a different place, I think as long as you're open-minded and more of a curious person by nature, I think that will manifest a mutual curiosity and interest for each partner, and that can build, and there's always new things for you to explore and do. And I think that's really important. But at the same time, I've also met people that they've tried that, but some people are not able to either appreciate that or able to be able to kind of manifest that. Because some people are just they're set in their ways, they're set in their cultural tendencies, etc. And when they meet other people, it may work out as friends, but in a relationship, it can cause a lot of, heads to butt and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes like you have to be a certain type of person, be willing to try different things, and
exactly for sure.
Yeah.
Be open-minded to explore and understand and to appreciate other culture, right? The culture of your partner.
And sometimes the differences are too big, then it doesn't work, right?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes, maybe one partner may be that way, but the other one is not, and that can cause problems. And, as they say, it takes two to tango. You need to give and take and be flexible and understanding all at the same time.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the also interesting part that we're both living in US, and even if we date anyone American in the United States, it's not going to be the same culture as from back home, right? So it's either like you're dating American or you're dating someone who are international in US. It's still different culture.
Exactly.
As we're both international students in the United States.
Yeah, and that brings and that leads us into our next question of the evening. And this one, I think it can be both interesting, but also maybe like very direct and just something that happens is, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a couple? Like a couple people I dated, it's like it was great, but there were also some things that really like, oh, I never expected this would be an issue or something like that. So what would you say were like, maybe, hopefully not a lot, but what would you say were some of the maybe the main challenges, or maybe the most reoccurring challenges that you faced?
Yeah, so the one thing that I found really difficult when we started dating is the different expectations and different cultural like habits. So and this happens sometimes in Vietnam as well, where I come from. But when I moved to the US, I had sort of adapted the American like norms and like sort of like what is considered socially acceptable, right? So one example that I guess is the main occurring challenge is that I expect people to be on time. So when you say a meeting starts at 9, I would give 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. But any longer than that is problematic. And in Kazakhstan, it's very common for people to arrive an hour late without telling a text message saying, hey, I'll be late. And that like, for me, that was disrespectful and was mind blowing, but I guess I hadn't known that in Kazakhstan that was normal.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've also experienced. Like, just like, my family, and just, my family, we're like, you said this, it's happening at 8, you're there at 8, or actually be early, always be early.
Exactly.
But some people, it's not the case. Like, I remember when I was in Italy studying abroad, some of my friends I met over there, they'd be half an hour late, an hour late, and that's just kind of more of a common trend in Italy. It drove me nuts, but eventually you kind of had to realize this is how they do it here, and yeah, but yeah, I can see how that would be, at least until you understood it, very infuriating or just frustrating.
I think from my standpoint, when we met, I was only my 1 year living in States, and I didn't work. I was a college student, so I didn't really matter. Like, okay, half an hour late, 1 hour late. It's like, it's not a big deal, And back at home, it's pretty normal. Like, to work. People can come to work half an hour late, and which is fine also. Or when we had a wedding back in Kazakhstan and in Vietnam, everyone was on time or a little bit late. In Kazakhstan, we invited everyone to 5 p.m. People showed up only at 6 p.m. Like, everyone was 1 hour late. Yeah, and then that was already normal. Like, we knew that people would be 1 hour late. That's why we specifically told them to come at 5, because knowing that everyone will be late and will come at 6.
That way you could say, like, you haven't finished making everything or prepping everything, they're not going to be there on time, so you have extra time to prep, but you don't want to tell them 7 because then they'll come way too late.
Yeah, for sure. That was the case. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the first thing. What else would you say? Or
I think that when we mentioned that being on a distance, that was the biggest challenge in our relationship, like long distance relationship. The hardest part was when after graduation, I went back to Kazakhstan, and Tu moved to Oregon, and we were like 13 hours ahead of each other, right? And a time difference, and we were trying to talk to each other at least once a day, like at a Zoom call or Skype and video calling, and I was away for 9 months. So at some point, we haven't seen each other for 9 months. So that was a bit tough, I think.
Yeah, I think we had already dated for a year before we started doing this for 4 years. So it was sort of like this upside down thing, because usually people do distance for 3-4 years and then they do this. They're together for like 3 or 4 years and then they do distant for 6 months.
Okay.
For us, it was the opposite.
Actually, though, just from my own experiences, I think that actually may have helped a lot, because if you live with someone for a while, you get to know them more. It's not just, someone from a distance, but you get to know them more. And if you are apart, I think it's easier, at least from my experience, easier to stay together because you already know what it's like to live together or to, be in the same place. But I guess it's different for everybody.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. Yeah. But I think it's also that's the next challenge that was in our life, that we did distance for so long. And 2 years after we married, in 2019, we moved in together and started living with each other. And though we dated for so long, we actually never lived together. So, and it's like, okay, we've been married for 2 years, but we finally could move in with each other after Tu finished her PhD, and we're like, okay, now we live together, and now we have to adjust to each other.
Yeah, it was interesting because we got married while still doing distance. So we flew from US back to Vietnam to do wedding number 1.
Yes.
Finished that wedding.
Yes.
Flew to Kazakhstan to do wedding number 2, and then flew back to the US to go back to work.
That sounds like quite the logistical challenge.
Yeah, all separate cities, and then continue doing distance after that.
Right.
And we continue living with roommates instead of living together.
Yeah.
So, it was crazy, but it was fun. It's very memorable.
Oh yes, very memorable.
And I'm sure that, like, you know, once you move in together, you learn about each other's habits, your patterns, things like that. And that's where a lot of people I know kind of they butt heads at times, because like some people have certain levels of cleanliness, some people have certain ways of keeping the house, some people have certain ways of like organizing things, some people are more OCD about like order and structure. So
yeah, no, definitely. I think that was difficult, but I guess personally for me it wasn't too bad. Actually, you know, not too long after we moved in together, like less than a year after COVID happened, right? So we went from like not seeing each other for like 6 months to being together 24/7 and not being able to like get your own like personal space because we were in lockdown.
Yeah.
But
it's like when you move in together, it's nice, but then you realize, oh yeah, I don't have the house to myself anymore, or my apartment to myself. So I mean, you still can have your own privacy, but it's not the same as if you live alone.
Yeah. And then I think before COVID, like we didn't live together. Like at first it was okay, I think. And then when COVID happened, we were like, you can't even go to a coffee shop anymore because nothing was open. So we were just like together all the time.
Yeah, it's actually a scary statistic, but I know in China and a few other countries, I think here too, the divorce rate has shot up since COVID started.
Yeah. But you know what, for us, I think, like personally, I feel like the distance relationship actually made us appreciate each other. So when we lived together and we were together in lockdown, we were like, well, you know, at least we're together and not like, I don't know how many hours away from each other.
And that's a very good point. Mindset. It's the mindset and the appreciation. But I think, but to me, it's just so sad to see how this pandemic has broken up so many, you know, relationships and even, you know, people that are been married for a while. And it's kind of sad. It's like, well, you've been married for who knows how long, but now you're stuck together for a few months and you can't deal with that. That's kind of sad in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's very sad.
I think I read a similar article about people like divorcing and just like, I guess, non-married couples breaking up more.
I mean, granted, you can't spend every minute every day with your partner because, you know, you need time for yourself, you need time with friends, etc. But I mean, just the fact that if you both understand you're stuck in a situation but you can't make things work, that's just quite unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. It is. Luckily for us, we made it work. Well, we made it work to do a distance for 5 years. So being in lockdown together, it was good. Yeah, I actually lost some weight even because she forced me to work out 3 times a day. 3 times a week, sorry. 3 times a week, not 3 times a day.
Yeah, I'm like 3 times a day. That's a little extreme.
Yeah, 3 times a
Either
week.
you'd be totally jacked, really like fit, or just totally exhausted.
Yeah, 3 times a week.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So moving on, here's another interesting dynamic that would be cool to discuss is how did what were your families like, or how did they react when you informed them you guys were going to be married?
I think my family took it very, very well. Since I lived abroad for quite a while, they were expecting. They knew that I was. There is a chance that I'm dating someone foreign. I'm going to marry someone foreign, and they took it very well. And they were quite happy to meet her. And then I think then 2017 we decided that we'll fly to Vietnam, and my parents and my grandmother flew to Vietnam in order to do this, asking for her hand basically, because there was after I proposed her, but we wanted parents meet each other and parents asking permission and saying.
Yeah, as we say, like in the U.S., you want both parents' blessing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it was. Blessing. Yeah, we asked for blessings from both parents, and I think my mom and my grandma were very happy because they also like travel, and they were happy to find out the twos from Vietnam. As there was also a little bit of connection through former Soviet Union because Kazakhstan was part of Soviet Union and was a great ally of Vietnam. And my grandma would always tell, like, oh yeah, I remember Vietnamese students coming to Soviet Union, to Russia to study, and they were real great and cheerful and friendly. And that's why they never been to Vietnam, and I myself never been. So when we first time went, they were very happy, and they were like, well, it's a new culture, new language, new food, and everything was new, and they were very excited about it.
That's cool, and not to mention how just political alignments and previous events could help you guys in that capacity.
Yeah. And then we find out that our cultures are quite similar. There's a lot of things where you have to be very respectful to elders, to your grandparents, to your parents. There is a certain traditions, norms that are very similar, like asking blessings from your parents, our grandparents. Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
I think my family was also, well, they sort of expected me to, like, I guess, not marry someone from my own country, so that they were not super surprised. And I think once the two families met, my parents and my grandparents, I think they loved Oja's family because his family was so kind and like, gracious. I don't know how do you call it? British people, very posh and
gracious, welcoming, warm,
very well spoken. Yeah. And so they were very happy. I think.
Yeah, because I know for a lot of multicultural international couples, that's the one thing that makes everyone go like you're concerned, like, oh, what's my family gonna think of? Because I've had friends, they've met people from abroad, and sometimes one family's, oh, this is fine, or the other family is not so keen on it, or they're very nervous or like just worried about it until they actually meet the person. But it depends on, I think it just really depends on each family. Culture and country is one factor, but it's more just the family dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We're lucky that both of our families were very supportive.
Yeah. And both our families went to each other country for the wedding. When we had the wedding in Vietnam, my family flew to Vietnam for everyone, my brother and even his girlfriend and my mom, my extended family, uncles and aunts. And then when we had the second wedding in Kazakhstan, her family flew to Kazakhstan, and that was for them first time. So they had the fun, right, in Kazakhstan. Yeah.
Well, hey, that's excellent, because sometimes that's not possible, or but that's great. But yeah, I just remember talking to a lot of, especially in China, I had talked to a lot of friends where they'd say, yeah, I wouldn't mind dating or marrying a foreigner, but my parents would be, if I told my parents, they'd kill me. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I remember one, she was like, yeah, my family, they do international trade, they work with foreigners all the time, but if I told them I was wanting to marry a foreigner, they would lose it. I'm like, really? Well, that's sad, but that's great. And it's glad to hear you guys have had a lot, very few obstacles or challenges on that front as well, because unfortunately I've known people who have faced a lot of issues with that, and it's quite sad to see.
No, we have some friends who had difficulty with their families, and
right. Yeah,
we're lucky in that aspect.
Exactly.
One thing I want to mention that maybe also would help is that her mom speaks English and my mom speaks English, so they were actually able to talk to each other and using English. And the rest of the time we have to translate from Vietnamese to English, and I translate from English to Russian or Kazakh. Yeah, but our moms can talk to each other, and that kind of help because they can just hang out and basically chit chat.
Oh yeah, and use communication, just like your relationship. Communication is a very important thing. Families too. They're able to communicate without assistance. That's even better. Or
I think if one family or both family don't speak English, or like they have a language barrier, that may be more difficult.
Exactly. And of course, you like the couple, you guys can translate, but that can be very tedious and kind of and exhausting if you're at a big function and everyone's asking, you're just trying to go between 1, 2, 3 languages, because having studied Chinese and done that with some friends that couldn't speak Chinese and English, after a couple hours I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. That's good. So that's cool. So here, this kind of goes back to maybe an earlier question, but what would you say were a couple of factors or a number of factors that aided you guys in your relationship? We've kind of touched on this, but I don't know if there's any specific like things that aided maybe your relationship progression to where you are now.
I think our experience overall living abroad, like that we're both internationals and we're both immigrants from our countries that moved around a lot. I lived in US, the United Kingdom, and Canada, and we traveled a lot. We were aware of other cultures, and we were very respectful to other cultures as well and traditions. And I think, not ignorant, and we were. And if we don't know something, we would ask. If I don't know something about Vietnamese culture, I would ask too. What was the norm, right? What would be more acceptable? And she would explain to me. I think that would definitely help a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would say in addition to that, I think even though we're from different countries and we grew up in very different circumstances and whatnot, our family actually have very similar core values. Like this, which was something I didn't know until like way later. But it made sense looking back now, because his like Oja's mother raised him the way, I don't know, like so that he can be the person that I'm like, oh, I look at him and like, okay, this is the person that I want to spend my life with.
No, I think that's really important, regardless of where you are. You need to have certain, ethical and moral values that are, I would say mutually understood or mutually acceptable.
Yeah.
Because if they're not, because if the things that make you who you are and what you abide by and what you think is right and wrong, if those are different, good luck with trying to make something work.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even though you could be from different cultures, different countries, you could have very similar core values, and that could make a relationship work better.
Oh, for sure. And and I've seen both the good and the bad and the ugly with that. And I think in your point about, I think, traveling abroad, everyone who I've met that's traveled or spent time overseas, they tend to be just more open-minded and more open to do things.
Yes.
Because I meet so many people who are like, I tell them, I lived in China for 4 years. They're like, how did you do that? And I'm like, it's not that difficult. You just, you learn from the locals. You try to learn what you can. You're open-minded, and as the old adage goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Yeah, exactly. As I guess that's what we did. Like that's moving around, actually adjusting to all those challenges and to different cities, cultures everywhere we move. That made us stronger, and then it was more open-minded to each other. And when we actually met, I think we didn't have expectations how dating to each other would be, right? If you date someone from your own culture, you have like expectations, or you do this and that, or first date, second date, I don't know, flowers and chocolate. But we were from different countries, and we're both living in States, and so American culture is also not part of us. Partially, we adopted it, but not fully, right? And so I didn't have expectation like, when I will be dating her, she's supposed to, I don't know, cook it for me or so.
Yeah.
Or when we got married, I'm like.
Yeah, I think that's another thing is some people they have preconceived notions about what a partner should do, what you should do, and that's universal regardless of where you are. But and it's fine to have those, but I think you have to be able to be flexible, or if that's how your family does it or how your parents do things, it doesn't mean that's how you're going to do things with your wife or with your husband based on where they are, who they are, where they're from. So, and some people, that's no problem. Other times people have problems with that because it's like, that's how it's supposed to be done. And they're like, no, that's how we do it. Well, this is how we do it.
Exactly.
Back and forth. And then another thing is, I think that's important to discuss is, what do you admire most about each other?
Sense of humor.
That's a good one.
For sure. Yeah. We laugh a lot. Like I would say, laugh for animals. When I met Tu, she had a cat, and she adopted Juliet a year before she moved to Akron. And I always wanted to have pets, but I didn't. So I always wanted to have a cat. When we adopted a dog a year and a half ago from a senior dog shelter, and then I admire a lot her love to animals, and also love to life, to nature, and to travel. Also Yeah. What about you?
I think your positive attitude and confidence.
Both good aspects, very good aspects.
Yeah, and it's I think it's really helped me in my life because like sometimes things in your life go well and sometimes they don't go so well, and when the things in my life don't go so well, it has been really helpful to have someone next to me who is like a giant always like how to say,
like someone
a
who's
positive cheerleader,
like positive reinforcement, as you can say.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Who like believes in my ability to like conquer whatever obstacles more than I believe in myself. Because a lot of times I'd be like, oh, maybe I should just like stop doing this. It's like, why am I doing this? And he's like, no, you're so good, you can do this. And I think that's been really amazing to see that.
I see. So you could say it's like positive attitude, confidence, being open-minded, sense of humor. I think all these things are very important. That and I think that the couples that I know, especially some older couples from family friends who've been married a long time, I think the ones who've had a sense of humor and they're able to do so many different things together and appreciate each other, they're the ones that's why their relationships last so long.
Yes. Yeah.
I think another thing, I know we keep like talking about it, it's like beating a dead horse or something, but about being open-minded, I think one important aspect that has helped our relationship a lot is that because we came from different culture, it was an opportunity to build a relationship the way we wanted, free of all the society's expectations. Because depending on where you come from,
like no preconceived notions, nothing set in stone. It's like we can create like something new here, combining what we both know and what we both have experienced into something that works for both of us. That's a great attitude to have.
Yeah. And if I had met and married someone from my own culture, that would not have been possible.
Same, yeah. And we don't even have to adopt our host country, like Canadian or American culture, or preconceived notions. We don't have to adopt them because we're not from here. We can say that, well, we in our country we do it different. Well, actually, in our family we do it differently. Right?
No, that's a great perspective, and that's actually the first time I've heard a couple say that. But that's very inspiring, and I think it's wonderful to hear that, and it kind of I think gives testament to how you two have been successful, especially being apart so long, moving from multiple countries and everything else. That's awesome. So now here's another important thing I think that people can get a lot of good insight is what would you say, or what do you want people to know about multicultural or multiracial relationships? Like, because a lot of people, if they're just from their area, they marry someone local, they have no idea what it's like to date someone else from another country or from a different culture. So like, what do you want people to know about that? Maybe because there's a lot of ignorance, for lack of a better way of saying it, about, how people come together from different places that I've encountered.
That's difficult. I don't know. I need some time to think. You want to go first?
I think I would suggest, or I would not suggest, I would share that be kind and be open, be very open-minded towards other culture, respectful also, not only to the culture, but traditions, and language and food. A lot of times, like, we laugh about each other, that she's very open in terms of food. I'm very open about food. And while we travel, we're like, oh, let's try this and that. But I meet a lot of people who like wouldn't eat other than chicken or beef. Like, oh, I hate fish, or I don't eat pork, or I don't eat, seafood. Like, no, be open-minded. If you don't have like food allergy, you're not gonna die from it, right?
I completely agree, and I've met so many people both here and when I was overseas that they like, oh, they only ate the hotel food, they only ate certain food, and I'm just like, what's the big deal? Or, oh, I can't try that. Well, why can't you try it? I just don't want to. I'm like, and also I find that having that attitude is specifically when you're in the country, it's going to open a lot more doors for you because the locals will see that you're interested. You want to try their food, you want to try their alcohol, you want to try what they do, activities. And that's going to open doors for you. And also, you can make friends, and then who knows? Or, potentially, like, you guys find someone you may want to date and marry.
Yeah. That's the thing. That how else you find out about other country or culture except from food and talking to them, or discussing something, or get to know them through. But food is one of the things that we have how to get to know someone's culture, right? We put our culture into food a lot.
And what's something that everyone, regardless of where you are, has to do? Eat. So I find food is like the quintessential factor that can bring people together, regardless of religion, race, language. Yes. Everyone wants to eat, and if you're open to trying food and experimenting with food, albeit safely, of course, that's something very important.
We have a lot of stories about experiencing food like not safely as well, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Sometimes. We tried.
I think it's I don't think I have a better answer than that. I think food is so, and it's something that I didn't really think about when I was younger, but it's so important. And I think not like what you said earlier, not eating or not being, at least trying different things can really limit your experience when you travel abroad.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just for myself, I remember going to places in China and like going into restaurants, and I'll order all this food, and the Chinese will be like, "Oh, foreigners never eat that stuff. Why is he eating it?" And then they come over and, "Hey, you like this?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's good." Really? And that's another thing. It opens up conversations, and it opens up, just opens doors in a broad context. So that's great. And that kind of leads on to our additional question is, what advice would you give to people in a multicultural relationship, or those who are interested in maybe pursuing one?
Okay. Yeah, I would say whatever. I think going back to the same, being open-minded, whatever preconceived notions you have of the other person or the other culture or how a relationship is supposed to work, I would say leave that at the door, and then just listen and find out about the other person. And use it as an opportunity again to sort of create your own relationship, using values that you both have instead of whatever society has sort of, I don't know, either taught it or brainwashed it, or I don't know, in a good or bad way, right? Like take what you agree with or you think is good, and then the not so good part you can leave it out of your relationship.
So in other words, come at it with a clean slate,
Yeah. I agree totally with that. Yeah, build your own family, build your own house, create your own culture. You have two different cultures mixing together. It's a beautiful thing, like a lot of companies nowadays promote diversity and inclusion. That's what you can do inside your family. You have two different cultures. You bring so much diversity into your family and inclusion because you include my food and her food, like for New Year Eve or celebrations. Like in our family, we celebrate 3 different New Year Eves. We have a Lunar New Year, have a Persian New Year, which is in my country, and we also celebrate December 31st, Gregorian calendar New Year, right?
Nothing wrong with that. Three more reasons to party, right?
Exactly. The more the better.
That's great. Yeah, and I think you bring up good points. I think a lot of people, they don't fully understand what they're potentially getting themselves into, especially if they don't have no context. But, and I think that's where having a bit of understanding of the world, or just having experience with different people and places really helps. Because some people, if two people have never left or been outside where they're from and they meet, it could still work out, but it may be more difficult because they may have a harder time adjusting to the other person and how they do things.
Yeah, I think if you're dating someone from a different country, after all of this is over, it would be very important to at least visit that country, because no matter how much you talk to the person, it's not until you visit that you learn a lot about that country and the culture and history and everything that goes with it.
And language.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's another thing. I think just I think depending on where you're from and what your family dynamic is, or just what your family's done. But when I told my family, "Hey, I'm going to go to China," they're just like, "What?" but I think it's just, it's what you make what you want of it based on, what you want to achieve, and if you both, like you said, if you both are willing to work it out and, slog through to get through to where you want to be, that's all you need. But some people don't necessarily have that mental fortitude.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been great talking to you today. And I think we've had some interesting dialogue and discussions about, what it's like being in a multicultural relationship, and specifically for your case, from 2 different countries and then meeting in a third country, now living in a 4th country. That's quite a journey that very few can, I would say, match. So are there any final thoughts, suggestions, ideas, or anything important you would like people to know about the two of you, or maybe what your relationship can symbolize in a way?
That's a
good one.
very deep.
I guess the same thing that we discussed. Be open. Be positive about things, and no matter how hard life sometimes be for international couples, it's actually you can make it work, and it's great. It's amazing when you get to know each other, and you get to know each other, parents, food, and countries, languages. In the end, it's so much fun. You will just have blast and have a lot of fun. Yeah, and you have something to say?
I think maybe in a broader context, not exactly strictly related to like multicultural couples, but about multicultural things in general. I think like we travel a lot and we live in a lot of places before, and like once COVID happened, I still wake up every day thinking, I should have traveled more.
Yes.
So honestly, like if you have opportunity to do something and you're thinking about it, just do it, because you never know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, as I say, maybe from talking to the both of you, I could think of a couple of things that I've kind of gotten out from from what you two have done and been able to accomplish. I would say is, one is fortune favors the bold. Just don't worry about what people think. Just if you like each other, care for each other, and love each other, go for it. You can you make what you want out of it, and if you want to succeed, you can. And also, I think it goes to show it doesn't matter where you're from in the world. Anyone from any country can make a relationship work if they both come at it with the right, mindset and abilities.
Yes. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah. And also, I think it goes to show that the world is becoming more and more interconnected. And I think, there'll be more examples of what you two have done, but I think that's good overall. More mutual understanding, more, synchronism, inclusion, and the sharing of ideas and everything, which I think is really important, because ignorance and the fear of the unknown, I think, are two of the biggest, problems that we're facing now, because, suspicion and fear are what drive a lot of people or countries to do a lot of, things that we've seen the negative consequences of in the past.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. That's the thing, that the best thing against ignorance is to travel, right? One of the comedians in one of the show that we watch a lot said that travel, that's the best thing that you can do to beat the ignorance. Go on an exchange, go study 6 months somewhere. Go travel, take a year off, and do the backpacking. If you would see a lot of times, I think European Union is interesting concept, because there's so many countries in the Union, and all of them have different languages, different cultures, and they're so different, right? And if you look at that all together, European Union, maybe economy-wise, it's like US. But in US, I guess it's if you go to state, there is a lot of similarities still.
Yeah, everyone's going to speak the same language. The culture, the people, the values are more or less the same. It's not like Europe, where every country, different language, different culture, different history.
Yeah, so different. So that's the thing. Yeah, go travel, go explore the world, and hopefully we can do it again this year, and that'll be that'll be a great time to finally travel again.
Oh, I completely sympathize and understand with you on that point. So for the last thing tonight, something fun. What would you recommend if anyone wants to date someone from Kazakhstan or from Vietnam? What advice would you give them, or what are some maybe pointers you could hand out?
That's a funny one. Shall I start? You want me to start? Or you want?
I think someone from Vietnam.
Yeah.
I would say I think I will keep circling around like the same few points. Try the food. Don't like I dated a few people before we met each other and got married, and one of the big turnoffs was when someone would like not eat something when we went to a restaurant in the US, right? Like if we go to Vietnam, it's something, but they're like the international restaurants in the US, but that the food is served in the States, so it has to be safe. There's nothing like sketchy in it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the food is very similar, but you can still find a great deal of diversity from place to place.
Exactly. But and then you wouldn't worry about getting sick. It's in the US, right? So I mean, it's one thing if you're religious or if you choose to be or like food restrictions, right? But if you just don't eat something because you think it's out of your comfort zone, I think that's a big turn off.
I would relate to you there. What about like for Vietnam? What about maybe behavior or mannerisms? Maybe because I know like people here in the U.S. tend to be a little more liberal in showing affection or showing interest, and sometimes that's not necessarily appreciated or can be considered a little too much in other places.
Oh, I think one thing that is very not exactly what you're saying, but I think what can be really annoying for a Vietnamese person is if you meet them and then the only thing you immediately go and talk about the Vietnam War, because the country, it's so beautiful and it has, besides food, it has a lot of beautiful scenery. It has over 1,000 years of history, which is much older than like all the North American countries. And it has so much culture and the language is beautiful. So there's just so much to talk about. Besides jumping directly to the stereotype of, I only know about the war and nothing else about the country.
I can certainly understand how that would be very annoying.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know, I would imagine if you are dating someone from Mexico, if the only thing you talk about is taco. So from Canada, the only thing you talk about is maple syrup. That would also be very annoying.
Well, and just on a practicality note, it's not necessarily the best idea to jump into the first date talking about a war between your two countries.
Yeah, exactly. We might want to skip that.
Later, maybe you can discuss it, but not at first, or at least I wouldn't do that at first.
Yeah. Anything from Kazakhstan?
Kazakhstan, I would say don't talk about Borat movie. If it's for Vietnam, it's Vietnam or Kazakhstan, don't talk about Borat movie. It's the first thing that people usually tell me when they meet me. Like, just don't. It's just skip that. Yeah, just try to Google the country. Maybe find out something. It's the 9th largest country in the world. It's huge on the map. You can't miss it. And so it's a lot of cool things about the country, right? And then just ask any questions, but just don't mention the movie. You can get slapped. Like a lot of guys would, a lot of girls and guys were talking to Kazakh men and women, and they get slapped or get aggressive. And because it's like, well, which is I understand why. It's just a comedy. It's a movie. It's a show.
Yeah, I think that goes to a larger principle is don't judge a country just from a movie or something you've seen on TV. It's like there's maybe some truth in it, but don't take that as I know how to act in this country. It's like that does not end well. Yeah. Just be yourself. By the way, like I had one American friend who went to Kazakhstan on exchange in 6 months, and he was asking me, how should I act? What should I do? Like, what if people don't like me? What if they don't like Americans? I'm like, just be yourself. Like, it's just be yourself, man. Like, and he's went there, and he's a very nice country guy from Southeast Colorado, and he's tall, very loud, very funny, and
he's like, oh, I hate cities. I'm a country boy, and he went there and he just had a blast, man. People ride horses there. People drink beer. People like partying, and he's like, the country is amazing. He had so much fun. He would go rural areas and hunt with guys, and he was like, man, it's like Colorado. It's like there's mountains, there's steppes. You can go hunting. Beer is cheap. There are horses everywhere. Man, it's almost like Colorado, but everyone is just a little bit different, And people loved him. Like all my friends, like some friends who met him in my university when he went to exchange, everyone liked him a lot. He's like, man, the guy is so funny. He's this big, goofy American guy who is a 2 meter tall, huge dude, and he was just laughing around very loud. And just be yourself, You don't have to be.
That's awesome. That's hilarious. I'm envisioning that right now. No, but that's great. Well, guys, it's been a great time talking to you this evening, and it's really interesting, and I think very, at least for me, quite inspirational to kind of see what you guys have accomplished and just kind of the chemistry. Also, what lessons, ideas, or perspectives you've given to people who are maybe in the same position as you are, or you both are, or are considering doing something like what you two have done. So I just want to say, again, I really appreciate the time this evening, and, it'd be great to have you guys back to talk about something else or more. So, and like I said, I'm sure our viewers would be very happy to hear your thoughts and perspectives like they have. And so feel free to let us know about more stuff, because I'm sure we could talk about this all night.
Yeah.
At the rate this is going. That's great.
Thanks
for attending tonight. This has been another episode of International Immersion, and we will see you on the next one. Take care, stay safe, and let's hope with the new vaccines, COVID will be a thing of the past, so we can get back out there and explore and continue to do what we need to do.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.